my name's Joe Lefeber. I'm the director and producer on Unspoken.
My name is Justin Johnson. I am the cinematographer and producer for Unspoken.
Unspoken is about this young couple who, after an accident, have to find new ways to communicate with one another. Um, it's kind of a tale of two people who have to explore something that we take for granted on a daily basis, and that's verbal communication, and just kind of that struggle in relationship that comes from that fallout. Justin, anything to add to that?
No, that was perfect.
Okay. This is drama that you guys produced a couple years ago through the 48. Dramas aren't normally done through the 48. Everyone tries to do a comedy. So you guys, what made you decide to do a drama?
Justin, you want to touch on this one and I'll jump in after?
Sure. From my perspective, I don't really have any interest in making comedies. I think dramas are what, the things I like to watch, the things that are sort of compelling to me, and the things that I want to make. And I honestly think that making a comedy is actually probably harder. And doing so in the 48-hour sort of format is probably even more challenging because I think a lot of what makes comedy work is taking the time to, get the jokes right or experiment with different sort of ideas. And just with the nature of a 48, you don't have the time to do that. So, it just, for me, it was never really even a thought, for those reasons. Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, so I very distinctly recall, because Justin and another producer on the film and basically camera operator Garrett Parker, the three of us were the ones that went down for the 48 kickoff event. And I distinctly remember, like, on the way down, I was kind of stressing, like, okay, well, what if we just because let me back up. For the 48, we had to draw genres. And on the way down, I'm sitting there like, I'm not prepared. And I'd say we weren't prepared for these certain types of films. And I want to, and maybe I'm having revisionist history here, but I distinctly recall saying to them, I really hope we get silent film, because I have this idea for this silent film, and this is more or less what that was. And to me, I also, I tend to relate to dramas more as well, because I really appreciate the characters and putting characters in unique situations that maybe are struggles, and just watching how they how they interact with one another, how they grow and what they learn. So for me, I would say, like, it was kind of always in the back of my mind that I wanted to tell a story similar to this. And really the 48-hour challenge was really just kind of that motivator to give me a kick in the ass to make a movie, really.
Basically, what you're also saying is that you wanted to motivate yourself to make a movie, and you also chose the 48 as a means to do that.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll say, and this is probably one of my biggest flaws as a filmmaker, and as an artist in general, is I tend to procrastinate, and
I think most artists tend to do that.
right.
You ponder and you think about what you're making.
And sometimes that becomes very detrimental, and I find myself like overthinking things as well. So this was just kind of that shot of, you don't have any excuses. And for me, it was really also helpful to have a great cast and crew, um, because one, they made everything a lot easier, but also I felt that responsibility to them that, hey, this group of people, cast, crew, actors, they're all counting on me and this project as well. So I think that really helped push and motivate as well.
How was it received at the 48? Because from my experience, most people go to the 48 to have fun, to make comedies, and a drama is very rare there. Did it win anything? How was the audience reaction to it? Or
Yeah, so we were, I gotta think back now, because so to be clear, this, we had the 48 cut, and we submitted on time. But there were some things that, like, I wanted to go back and kind of expand upon. I wanted to like shoot a little bit more to kind of close some of the gaps. And there were certain things that we did for the 48 to check the box, but didn't really fit the vision. So I had the assistance of an editor, Matt Brandis, who basically kind of reworked some things. And then, Justin also came in to help sort of see the edit through to the end. But yeah, so the project has evolved and changed since what we submitted. And this is a long rambling answer to your question. We did win best makeup. Our makeup artist Emily, it was her first time ever doing a film. Um, so there's like scars that one of the actors had to have put on, and she did a phenomenal job. The scarring looked great. We tied for best use of genre. We were also nominated for best director, and I want to say we were also a nominee for best film. Um, so it's
it was well
something that I'm
received? It
quite
was
proud of.
yeah, well received then. So, Justin, we're talking about the 48. Can you explain to people who might not be aware what the 48-hour film contest, or how they want to call themselves now, and what a filmmaker has to do in that?
Um, yeah. Well, I might require a little assistance from Joe, because I don't remember exactly what we had to pick. So you when you go to the sort of the opening event where you're going to pick your genre, I mean, we got a character, a line of dialogue. Was there, what else was there?
A character, line of dialogue, and I want to say that there was a prop.
Prop. Okay. So these are just things that somehow need to be worked into the film somehow, and you get to choose how you do that. And then from that point, you have 48 hours to sort of conceive the idea, write the film, shoot the film, edit the film, and turn that film in, turn a final cut into turn a final cut of that film in. so you're basically, producing a film from beginning to end over the course of a weekend.
And
So
that
it's just a
includes,
very accelerated process.
and that includes actually writing a script too, with shooting, because you need something to shoot from. So you're writing, shooting, and editing, and final
And delivering.
render
Yeah.
in 48 hours. And if you live far away, you have to factor in your drive time. So that actually gives you less time to do it.
Yeah.
With that, you mentioned that, Joe, before, that you made some changes from the 48-hour version to the version we have now. What is it, because some of the things you had to do 48 kind of hampered the storytelling a little bit, or did you want to kind of enhance the certain aspects more?
Yeah, so I'm going to touch on one piece of this, and I think Justin, maybe you might have some things to add, because you kind of helped sort of craft things at the end. When you're making a film in such a tight, condensed time, there are certain things that you sort of leave on the table. There's one, our lead actor, Nick. He's the one who's kind of struggling with this, like the loss of hearing, and it's kind of leading to this communication issue. And while we see him struggle with this in the film, there are some things that I really wanted to include later, because there's a specific turning point, and I don't think that, based off of the 48 cut, we were able to really connect with him in that moment quite as much as after shooting it. There's one scene in particular that we kind of ended up leaving on the cutting room floor. So Justin, do you want to touch on that scene?
One of the struggles and one of the things we reworked after the 48 was, there's one pivotal scene in which, initially we made a decision to tell it from one person's perspective. And then upon, giving it a little bit more thought and consideration, we were, maybe this should be from this other person's perspective. And that is something that we sort of struggled and reworked. And, when you're forced to make a decision because you have this tight deadline, you kind of just, I guess, go with your gut. And, honestly, most of the time that's probably the right decision. But, that was one of those things that kind of got reworked over time as we had a little bit more time to kind of work with this. The other scene that kind of just got dropped, that was initially in the 48-hour cut, and it's not in this cut, I think is just featuring a required character. Is that the scene you're thinking of, Joe?
Yes, exactly.
And so, that's a situation in which, they give you certain elements you have to include in the film. And I think doing so can be fun, or it can be a challenge, or it can be kind of interesting to see how people do that differently. But it was something that kind of conflicted with the story we were trying to tell. It was included because, quite frankly, we had to, and it didn't add anything necessarily to the story we were trying to tell. And honestly, in that way, maybe we failed in the 48-hour version, because maybe we should have, Joe, you might have a different perspective on this, but maybe we didn't work that in as well as we should have.
So there's going to be 48-hour programmers everywhere that are going to just like shudder when I say this. To me, it was important because it was a requirement, and because of that, I wanted to do right by the responsibilities of the 48. and the rules that were set out. But to me, that scene was it was a detractor, and it was kind of that checking the box scene. And I so in that scene, there's another character, and for the folks that watch Unspoken, um, it's really is this like intimate portrait of just two characters. There's one sequence where there's a bunch of different patrons, but in a cafe. Um, but this scene that we cut was the required character. It was the required prop, and if I'm not mistaken, um, if I oh no, I am mistaken. It was the required prop and the required character, and we kind of just shoehorned them in to check that box when, in the reality of it, they weren't advancing the story or really
So
moving things forward.
you took two elements out, a prop and a character, and that just left you with the genre now.
And the line of dialogue that we had.
And a line of dialogue. Okay.
Which I guess technically speaking, the line of dialogue is also omitted to an extent.
I'm assuming since you sent it to the festival, you're probably sending it to other festivals. Do you feel it's a much stronger film now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I personally, I wouldn't feel comfortable sending it to festivals with, if I felt there were certain elements in there that didn't sort of add to the full experience. So I think it's a much better film without those elements, and that's what makes me sort of, I guess, proud of what we accomplished.
Yeah. So I will say that I'm incredibly proud of what we accomplished and what we did with the 48. And my previous statement was not meant to be like negative towards that experience or anything like that. I think that I will say I think every filmmaker should do 148. And if you like it after that, that's great and more power to you. But for some people, it's just it's not for them. I think, but I think it forces you to be creative, and it forces you to problem solve, and it forces you to do something in a very short time. So in that regard, I'm incredibly proud of what the team accomplished in 48 hours. But I'm really like I'm just so much more happy with sort of removing some of the constraints that we had and being able to tell the story a little bit more, a little bit differently.
Did you use the same editor for both versions?
No, so actually, the editor that we had for the 48 was Nelson Oliveira. And then, his schedule was just, we had the additional footage. Schedules didn't align. He was busy. I know he had a few other projects that he was working on. So that, I took it to another editor, Matt Brandis, who sort of like recut things. And then Justin, like I said before, he kind of put the finishing touches on it. Justin, what it's been such a long process. Your tweaks towards the end?
I think just the one scene, the cafe, or the outdoor cafe scene, I think for me was just, I think we both agreed, but maybe we just needed to kind of refine what that moment was about and what it meant for the character. And I think we kind of just simplified it. It was maybe just a little bit more complicated than it needed to be in that original cut. But I think that's the only scene I really made any changes to.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you for doing this today.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and if I could, so if anybody wants to check out what Justin and I are working on, we are partners with Snowdrift Films. So you can see Justin's film from last year's Milwaukee Short Film Festival, Mittens, on the website. There's a trailer for Unspoken, and there's some details about our next project that we are lining up called When We Meet Again.
Cool. Well, thank you again, guys, for doing this.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.